I watched my father's blood spread across my graduation gown while the entire auditorium screamed. 3 men in black suits stood over his body, and the worst part, they were smiling at me. Because I knew them. I knew them very well. And as the armed officers dragged me away in handcuffs, all I could think about was how it started. How one single moment of weakness in my 300 level destroyed everything my parents worked 20 years to build. My name is Mayer, and this is how I became a murderer on the day I was supposed to become a graduate. You know that child every Nigerian parent brags about? The one they use to shame their neighbors' children? That was me. Mayer. The golden boy. The one who never gave his parents trouble. From primary school to secondary school, I was that kid. I didn't join bad gangs. I didn't chase girls up and down. I just faced my books and minded my business. While other boys were sneaking out to watch football matches or following senior girls around the compound, I was in my room with my textbooks, determined to be different. My father, Papa Mayer, he worked as a civil servant in the Ministry of Works. Every day, he would wake up at 5 in the morning, iron his khaki uniform until it was crisp, and leave the house by 6:30. He worked long hours for small pay, but he never complained. Not once. My mother sold provisions in our neighborhood, a small wooden kiosk painted green and yellow where she sold everything from Indomie noodles to Blue Band margarine. She would sit there from morning until night, haggling with customers over 10 naira, 20 naira, saving every kobo she could. They were not rich people, but they sacrificed everything to send me to university. I remember the day we went to buy my jam form. My mother counted out the money from a small metal box she kept hidden under her bed. The notes were old and wrinkled, smelling of palm oil and determination. My father watched her count, his jaw tight, and I saw something in his eyes that day, a mixture of pride and fear. Pride that his son was going to university. Fear that they might not be able to afford it. When I gained admission to study engineering at the University of Lagos, my father cried. Real tears. He held my face in his rough, calloused hands and said, Mayer, you are going to be the first graduate in our family. Make us proud. I can still feel the weight of those hands. The calluses from years of holding pens, stamping documents, the physical evidence of his labor for me. I will, Papa, I promised. I will make you proud. And I did. First year, I came out with a 4.2 GPA. Second year, 4.1. I was not the most brilliant student in my department. There were boys who understood thermodynamics like they were born knowing it, girls who could solve differential equations in their sleep, but I was consistent. I was focused. I had a plan. Graduate. Get a good job. Take care of my parents. Build them the house they deserved. Simple. I had friends, yes, but I was careful. University of Lagos was not a joke. I knew students who came in with first-class dreams and left with third-class certificates and drug addictions. I knew girls who entered as virgins and left as baby mamas. I knew boys who joined cults for protection and ended up in early graves. The campus was beautiful, but it was also dangerous. So I kept my circle small. Very small. Just me and 2 other serious guys from my department, Chidi and Biodun. Chidi was from Anambra, a short, stocky guy with glasses who wanted to build bridges. Biodun was from Ibadan, tall and quiet, who dreamed of working for Shell. The 3 of us were inseparable. We studied together at the engineering faculty library, ate together at Mama Put's Buka behind Moremi Hall, and minded our business together. While other students were attending parties and grooving at clubs, we were solving problems from our textbooks, preparing for tests, discussing our futures. My parents were so proud of me. Every semester when I came home with my result, my mother would cook my favorite jollof rice and chicken. Not just any jollof, the kind with plenty of chicken, fried plantain on the side, and cold Coca-Cola. She would dish out my food personally, adding extra meat, her face glowing with satisfaction. My father would give me small money for the next semester, sometimes 5,000 naira, sometimes 3,000, depending on what he had, and pat my shoulder with that same calloused hand. This is my son, He would say to anyone who cared to listen, our neighbors, his colleagues who visited, the men at the beer parlor where he sometimes stopped on his way home. This one will not disappoint me. He is not like these other children wasting their parents' money. This one has sense. I would sit there eating my mother's jollof, listening to my father's praise, and feel the weight of it. The weight of being the golden boy. The weight of being the answer to their prayers, the justification for their sacrifices, the living proof that poverty was not a permanent condition if you had an educated child. But you see, the problem with being the perfect son is that nobody prepares you for when temptation comes. Nobody tells you that the higher you build your tower of perfection, the more catastrophic the fall will be. And when temptation came for me, it came like a flood, sudden, overwhelming, and utterly devastating. 300 level. Second semester. That was when everything started to crack. The semester had started well enough. I had registered for all my courses, strength of materials, fluid mechanics, engineering mathematics 3, and others. Chitty, bio done, and I had already formed our study group. We had our routine, lectures from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., break for lunch at Mama Put's, then library from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Saturdays were for assignments. Sundays were for church and rest. It was a good system. A safe system. But then something happened that I did not plan for. Something that would unravel everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I showed up at home, unannounced, carrying only a small bag. My mother was in her kiosk, serving a customer, when she saw me walking down the street. The shock on her face was immediate. Mayor? Mayor! She abandoned her customer and rushed out. What are you doing here? Is school on strike? I smiled. Too bright. Too quick. The kind of smile you give when you're trying to hide something. No, Mama. They gave us a short break. Just 2 weeks. The customer she had been serving, a woman from our street, looked at me curiously. Short break? I never hear say University Day give short break for middle of semester O. I kept smiling, ignoring her comment. Where is Papa? He is inside. He just came back from work. My mother was still studying my face, her maternal instincts already sensing that something was wrong. Mayor, are you sure you are all right? I'm fine, Mama. Just tired from the journey. Inside our small 2-bedroom flat, my father was sitting in the parlor, still in his khaki uniform, watching the NTA evening news. When he saw me, he stood up slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly. Mayor. It was not a greeting. It was a question. Good evening, Papa. He didn't respond immediately. He just looked at me, his gaze moving from my face to my small bag and back to my face. In all my years at university, I had never come home in the middle of a semester. Never. I came home during long break, during Christmas, during semester break. But never like this. Never unannounced. Never with this kind of fear in my eyes that I was trying so hard to hide. Sit down, he finally said. I sat on the edge of our worn sofa, the same sofa we had had since I was in primary school. My mother came in and stood by the door, her arms folded across her chest, waiting. Why are you home? My father asked. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. I had prepared this lie on the bus ride home, rehearsed it in my head over and over. The lecturers said they need to travel for a conference. A big engineering conference in Abuja. So they gave us 2 weeks break to rest and prepare for when they come back. It was a stupid lie. A terrible lie. Engineering lecturers don't all travel at the same time. Conferences don't shut down entire departments. But what could I say? That I had run away from school because I was afraid? That something had happened that made me fear for my life? That I had looked into the eyes of a dangerous man and seen my own death? My uncle, Uncle Tund, my father's younger brother, was visiting that day. He was sitting in the corner, watching me with sharp eyes. Uncle Tund was different from my father. Where Papa Mayor was gentle and trusting, Uncle Tund was skeptical and street-smart. He had never gone to university, but he had survived Lagos by learning to read people. "Mayor," he said slowly, "you don't look fine. You look like someone who is running from something." My heart stopped for a moment. "I'm not running from anything, Uncle. I'm just tired." "Tired?" Uncle Tund leaned forward. "Or afraid?" "Tund, leave the boy alone," my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. He was thinking the same thing. "I'm just saying, Mayor has never come home like this before. And look at him, he can't even look us in the eye." I forced myself to look up, to meet their gazes. "I'm fine. I just need to rest. School has been stressful." My mother, ever the defender, came to my rescue. "You people should leave him alone. He said he is tired. Let him rest. I will prepare food for him." But even as she said it, I could see the worry in her eyes. For those 2 weeks, I stayed in my room most of the time. Our house was small, so staying hidden was not easy, but I tried. I barely ate. My mother's jollof rice, which I usually devoured, sat on the plate untouched. I barely slept. Every sound outside, a car passing, someone shouting in the street, even the neighbor's dog barking, made me jump. I kept thinking about Black. About his threat. About the way he had looked at me when I ran out of his house. About Zara and the fear in her eyes. About the 2 options he had given me, join him or die. I had chosen to run. But running was not an option, not really. Black was patient. Black had resources. Black had people everywhere. Running only delayed the inevitable. My mother would knock on my door multiple times a day, worry in her voice. "Mayor, come and eat. You have not eaten since morning." "I'm not hungry, Mama. But you need to eat. You are becoming thin." "I'm fine, Mama. Please, I just want to rest." One evening, about a week into my stay, my father came to my room. He didn't knock. He just opened the door and walked in. I was lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling, and I didn't even turn to look at him. He sat down on the edge of the bed, the old mattress creaking under his weight. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. He just sat there, and I could feel the weight of his presence, the weight of his concern. "Son," he finally said, his voice soft, "if something is troubling you, you can tell me. Whatever it is, we can face it together." I looked at my father's kind face, his gentle eyes, the gray hair that had started appearing at his temples, the lines around his mouth that came from years of smiling through hardship. I wanted to tell him. God knows I wanted to tell him everything. About Black. About Zara. About the threat. About the choice I had been given. But how could I? How could I tell him that his perfect son, his golden boy, had gotten mixed up with criminals? How could I tell him that I had fallen for a girl who belonged to a gangster? How could I tell him that I had disrespected a dangerous man and now our entire family might be in danger? The shame was too heavy. The fear of disappointing him was stronger than the fear of Black. So I lied again. "Papa, nothing is wrong. I'm just stressed from school work. The courses this semester are very difficult. That's all." He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes. But he was my father, and fathers want to believe their children. So he nodded slowly and stood up. "Okay. But remember, Mayor, you are not alone. Whatever you are carrying, you don't have to carry it by yourself." He left the room, and I turned my face to the wall and cried silently. I cried because I knew I was lying to him. I cried because I knew that this lie would eventually destroy us. I cried because I was a coward. When the 2 weeks ended, I had no choice but to go back to school. I couldn't hide in my parents' house forever. Black knew where my parents lived, he had made that clear. Running home had been pointless. The only thing I had accomplished was planting seeds of doubt in my parents' minds. On the day I was supposed to leave, my parents walked me to the motor park in Yaba. My mother held my hand the whole way, like I was a child again. My father walked beside us, carrying my bag, silent and thoughtful. At the park, as I was about to board the bus back to campus, my mother hugged me tight. She smelled like coconut oil and provision kiosk, the smell of home. Be careful, my son. And if anything is bothering you, please call us. You hear me? Don't carry heavy loads by yourself. I will, Mama. My father stood slightly apart, watching us. When my mother finally let me go, he stepped forward and handed me my bag. Then he did something he had never done before. He pulled out his wallet and gave me all the money inside, about 8,000 naira. Papa, this is too much. Take it, he said firmly. I don't know what is troubling you, but I know something is wrong. This money, use it to solve whatever problem you have. You hear me? If you are in trouble, if someone is threatening you, if you need help, use this money. Get help. Don't try to be strong by yourself. I looked at the money in my hand and felt the weight of it. This was probably all the money my father had. This was meant for feeding, for transport, for emergencies. And he was giving it all to me because he knew, somehow, he knew, that I was in trouble. Thank you, Papa. As the bus drove away, I looked back through the rear window and saw my father watching me. My mother was waving, calling out last-minute instructions I could no longer hear. But my father just stood there, his hands in his pockets, his face grave and worried. Something in his expression told me he knew. He knew I was hiding something. He knew his son was in danger. But he chose to trust me. He chose to believe that his golden boy would handle whatever it was. He chose to have faith that I would come to him if things got too bad. That trust would be the death of him. Let me tell you what really happened in 300 level. Let me tell you the full story of why I ran home like a coward. Let me tell you about Zara and Black and the trap I walked into with my eyes wide open. There was this guy on campus. Everyone called him Black. Nobody knew his real name, some said it was Uchenna, others said it was Tunt, but nobody called him anything except Black. He was not a student, but he lived around the university in a big house off Akoka Road. He controlled things. Drugs, marijuana, tramadol, codeine, whatever you wanted. Girls, he had a network of campus girls who worked for him, recruiting other girls, organizing parties for rich men. Protection, if you wanted to survive in certain areas of the school, if you wanted to move freely at night, if you wanted to do business on campus, you needed Black's permission or at least his neutrality. I had heard about Black since first year. Everyone had. There were stories, wild, terrifying stories. A boy who owed Black money and was found beaten so badly he had to withdraw from school. A girl who tried to leave his network and ended up with her private pictures posted all over campus social media. A lecturer who tried to investigate Black's activities and suddenly got transferred to Unilag's satellite campus in the middle of nowhere. The stories were whispered in hallways, discussed in hushed tones in hostel rooms, but never reported. Because everyone knew, you don't cross Black. You don't even look at Black the wrong way. I had heard these stories, but they were distant from me. I was the serious student. The golden boy. I didn't go to parties. I didn't buy drugs. I didn't hang around campus at night. I went to class, went to the library, went back to my hostel. I was untouchable, or so I thought. But then I met her. Zara. She was beautiful. Not just regular beautiful, the kind of beautiful that makes a man forget his name, forget his plans, forget everything he's been taught about being careful. She was in my department, civil engineering, but somehow I had never really noticed her before. Or maybe I had noticed her, but I had filed her away in my mind as distraction and moved on. She was always alone. That's what I noticed most. In a department where everyone formed groups, where people were always loud and social, Zara was an island. She sat at the back of lecture halls. She never participated in group discussions. She ate lunch by herself. She walked across campus with her head down, her earphones in, existing in her own world. I liked that about her. In a way, she reminded me of myself, focused, separate, above the chaos. It was a Thursday afternoon in the library. I was studying for a fluid mechanics test, trying to understand Bernoulli's principle, when she appeared. She didn't ask if the seat was taken. She just sat down next to me, opened her own textbook, and started reading. We studied in silence for maybe an hour. I was hyper-aware of her presence, the way she bit her pen when she was thinking, the way she twisted a strand of her hair around her finger, the faint smell of her perfume, something flowery and expensive. Finally, she turned to me. "Can I borrow your pen?" Just like that. 4 words. And my life changed forever. "Sure." I handed her my pen. "Thanks." She smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. "You're Mayor, right? You always score the highest in our tests." I was surprised she knew my name. "Sometimes. Not always." "Always," she corrected. "I pay attention." We talked after that. Small talk at first, about lectures, about difficult courses, about lecturers we found annoying. Then deeper talk, about why we chose engineering, about our dreams, about life. She told me she was from Benin, that her parents were wealthy but distant, that she had always felt alone. I told her about my parents, about being the golden boy, about the pressure of being perfect. "It must be exhausting," she said, her eyes soft with understanding, "always being what everyone expects you to be." "It is," I admitted, surprised at my own honesty. I had never said that out loud before. After that day, we became friends. We started studying together. Then we started eating lunch together. Then we started taking walks together in the evening around campus, talking about everything and nothing. Chitty and Biodun noticed, of course. They teased me about it. "Mayor, this girl has caught you." "Oh," Biodun would say, laughing. "It's not like that," I would protest. "We're just friends." But it was like that. I knew it. She knew it. We just hadn't said it yet. I knew I was supposed to be focused on my studies. I knew that getting involved with a girl could be a distraction. But Zara made me feel something I had never felt before. For the first time in my life, I wanted something more than just good grades. For the first time, I imagined a future that included more than just taking care of my parents. I imagined having someone to share my life with. Looking back now, I can see how naive I was. How stupid. How blind. One evening, about 6 weeks after we met, we were walking back from the library. It was late, around 9 p.m., and the campus was dark except for the few street lights that actually worked. We were talking about our future, about what we would do after graduation. She was telling me about her dream to travel, to see the world, to be free from her parents' expectations. That's when a big Jeep, a black Range Rover with tinted windows, stopped in front of us. The sudden appearance of it, the way it cut off our path, sent a jolt of fear through me. 4 men came out. Big men. Dangerous-looking men. The kind of men who made it clear with their body language alone that they were not to be trifled with. They wore jeans and tight black shirts that showed off their muscles. Their faces were hard, expressionless. "Zara," one of them called. His voice was deep, commanding. "Boss wants to see you." Zara's face changed in an instant. All the color drained from her skin. All the ease and warmth I had grown accustomed to vanished, replaced by something that looked like terror. "Tell him I'm busy." The man laughed. A wicked laugh. A laugh that said he had heard that response before and it had never worked. Boss doesn't take no for an answer. You know that. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me. His eyes were flat, emotionless, assessing. "Who is this one?" "Your new boyfriend." Before I could answer, before I could even think about what to say, Zara grabbed my hand and pulled me towards the Jeep. Her grip was tight, desperate. "Let's just go. Don't argue with them." "Zara, what?" "Just come with me," she hissed. "Please. If you argue, it will be worse." I should have run right then. I should have asked her what was going on, demanded answers. But I was confused, and I was afraid, and her hand in mine was shaking so badly that all I could think about was protecting her. We got into the Jeep. The men got in with us, sandwiching us between them. The car smelled like cigarettes and something else, something sharp and chemical that made my eyes water. Nobody spoke during the drive. I tried to catch Zara's eye, to ask her silently what was happening, but she was staring at her hands, her whole body tense. That was how I met Black. His house was big. Too big for someone who was not doing legitimate business. It was one of those mansions you see in Lled, with high walls, security cameras, and a gate that looked like it belonged to a bank. Inside, the compound was even more impressive, a fountain in the center, expensive cars parked in a neat row, manicured lawns that must have cost a fortune to maintain. But what struck me most were the men. There were men everywhere. Standing by the entrance. Sitting in the living room. Leaning against walls. All of them armed. All of them watching us like we were prey. Black was sitting on a big leather chair in what looked like a study, all dark wood and expensive furniture. He was smoking, the blue smoke curling up toward the ceiling, and when he saw us, he smiled. It was not a kind smile. Zara. His voice was smooth, educated even. This was not what I expected. I had imagined Black would be crude, uneducated, street. But this man spoke like he had gone to private school. My beautiful Zara. I've missed you. I told you I needed space, Zara said. Her voice was shaking, but she was trying to sound firm. Space? Black laughed, but there was no humor in it. Baby, I gave you 3 years of space. 3 whole years. I let you play your games, do your small study, pretend you're not who you are. That's enough now. It's time to come back home. That was when I understood. Zara was Black's girlfriend. Or she used to be. Black finally looked at me. Really looked at me. His eyes moved from my worn sneakers to my faded jeans to my department polo shirt to my face. He was assessing me, calculating. And who is this small boy? This your new catch? He's just my friend, Zara said quickly. Too quickly. He doesn't know anything about us. I just didn't want to come alone. Black stood up. He was tall. Taller than me. Broader than me. He walked over to where we were standing, and with each step, I felt smaller. He stopped in front of me, so close I could smell the alcohol on his breath. Friend, he said softly, dangerously. Just friend? Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to say yes. To agree. To apologize for whatever I had done wrong. To get out of there alive. But I looked at Zara, and I saw the fear in her eyes, the pleading, and something in me, some stupid, naive, heroic impulse, made me speak. She doesn't want to be with you anymore. You should respect that. The room went silent. Completely silent. The men who had been lounging around suddenly sat up straight. The ones who had been talking stopped mid-sentence. Everyone was looking at me now, looking at the small boy who had just challenged Black in his own house. Black stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed. He laughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes. He bent over, holding his stomach, laughing like I had just told the funniest joke he had ever heard. This small boy get mind oh, he said between laughs. Get liver. I like you. I like you plenty. He patted my shoulder. The pat became a grip. His hand was heavy, tight, a warning disguised as affection. You know what? He said, his laughter dying away. I'm going to give you 2 options. Just 2. Simple options. He walked back to his chair and sat down, crossing his legs, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. Option 1, you join my family. You work for me. I need smart boys like you. Engineering student, ABI. First-class brain. You can be useful. You join me, you make money. Plenty money. More money than your father will see in his entire life. You enjoy life. You chop life. And maybe, just maybe, I'll let you keep Zara. Not as your girlfriend, let's not be foolish. But you can enjoy her small. Share and share alike. He let that sink in. Then he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried across the entire room. Option 2, you walk out of here today. You go back to your hostel. You sleep in your small bed. And tomorrow morning, your parents will be planning your burial. Simple. Clean. Final. My heart stopped. Everything in me froze. This was not a movie. This was not a threat meant to scare me. This was real. This man would kill me. He had killed before. I could see it in his eyes. So, small boy, he said, smiling that terrifying smile again. What do you choose? Join me and live? Or be a hero and die? I looked at Zara. She was crying silently, shaking her head at me. Her eyes were saying everything her mouth couldn't. Run, they said. Run and don't look back. Forget about me. Save yourself. And that's exactly what I did. I ran. I mumbled something, I don't even remember what, and I ran out of that study, out of that house, past all those armed men who watched me go with amusement in their eyes. I ran until I couldn't breathe, until my lungs burned, until I was far enough away that I felt safe. And then I collapsed on the side of the road and vomited. I was a coward. I knew it then. I know it now. A real man would have stayed. Would have faced Black. Would have protected Zara. But I was not a real man. I was the golden boy. I was the perfect son. And perfect sons don't die in gangsters' mansions. They go to university. They get degrees. They make their parents proud. So I ran. And 2 days later, I was at my parents' house, lying about a fictitious break, trying to hide from the consequences of my cowardice. But Black was a patient hunter. He didn't want my life immediately, he wanted my soul. He gave me 2 weeks to stew in my fear, 2 weeks that felt like 20 years of paranoia, 2 weeks where every shadow looked like one of his men, every phone call felt like a threat, before the inevitable consequence of my courage arrived. The day I got back to school after my 2-week escape to my parents' house, the first thing I saw was a crumpled piece of paper taped to my hostel room door. My hands were shaking as I pulled it off and unfolded it. It was a single word, handwritten in sharp, angry strokes, tick-tock. The game was on. I didn't see Zara for weeks after that. I looked for her in lectures, in the library, in the cafeteria, but she had vanished. Or maybe she was avoiding me. Or maybe Black had taken her back, locked her away somewhere. I didn't know, and the not knowing was its own kind of torture. Chitty and Biodun noticed my change. How could they not? The guy who used to be first to arrive at study sessions was now showing up late or not at all. The guy who used to engage enthusiastically in academic discussions now sat silently, staring at his textbook without really seeing it. Mayor, what's wrong with you these days? Chitty asked one afternoon. We were at Mama Put's, but I had barely touched my food. You've been acting strange since you came back from that year break. Nothing is wrong. I'm fine. You're not fine, Biodun said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. We're your friends, Mayor. If something is bothering you, you can tell us. But I couldn't tell them. How could I explain that I had gotten involved with a gangster's girlfriend? That I was being threatened by one of the most dangerous men around campus? That every day I woke up wondering if it would be my last? They were good guys, innocent guys. Pulling them into my mess would be like pulling them into quicksand. I'm just stressed about school, I lied. Nothing serious. They didn't believe me, but they let it go. That was the worst part, watching my friendships crack under the weight of my secrets. I threw myself into my studies with a desperate intensity. If I was going to die, I decided, at least I would die with my GPA intact. At least my parents would be proud of my results even if they had to view them at my funeral. It was a morbid thought, but it kept me going. I studied like a man possessed, solving problems late into the night, memorizing formulas, preparing for tests. My grades didn't suffer. If anything, they improved. But I was hollow inside, a shell of the golden boy I used to be. Then, 3 months later, she appeared. I was in my room, door locked, working on an assignment, when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps. I froze. Nobody knew I was in my room. Chitty and Biodun thought I had gone to the library. My roommate had traveled home for the weekend. 3 more taps. Softer this time. Almost desperate. Mayor. Her voice was a whisper through the door. Please. It's me. Open up. Zara. I should have left the door locked. I should have pretended I wasn't there. But hearing her voice after months of silence, months of worry, broke something in me. I opened the door. She looked terrible. There was a bruise on her cheek, partially covered with makeup. Her lip was split. She was thinner than I remembered, her collarbones sharp under her t-shirt. But her eyes were the worst part. They were empty. Dead. Can I come in? She asked. I should have said no. But I stepped aside and let her enter. She sat on my bed, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. I didn't know what to say. Sorry. Are you okay? What happened? All the questions seemed inadequate. Finally, she spoke. He beat me, Mayor. He beat me because I refused to come back to him fully. He said he's going to kill me. He said he's going to kill both of us. Her tears were real. I believe that now, looking back. The pain was real. But everything else was performance. We need to go to the police, I said. We need to report him. She laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. You think Black is afraid of police? Half of them are on his payroll, Mayor. The area commander. Black paid for his daughter's wedding. The DPO. Black bought him a car last Christmas. Who do you think will help us? Who? Then what do we do? I asked, my voice weak, already defeated. She looked at me with those empty eyes. We run. Tonight. We leave this school and never come back. We disappear. The temptation was overwhelming. Running with her, becoming fugitives together, it was like something out of a movie. It was romantic in a tragic way. We could go to another state, change our names, start over. I could forget about engineering, forget about making my parents proud, forget about being the golden boy. But I couldn't. I was in 500 level now. Final year. I had 6 months left until graduation. 6 months until I could hold that certificate and hand it to my father and see the pride in his eyes. 6 months until I could justify all their sacrifices. How could I throw it all away? I can't run, Zara. I'm in 500 level now. Final year. I have 6 months left until graduation. I can't throw it all away. Then you're going to die, Mayor. Her voice was flat, certain. We're both going to die. Maybe we can wait it out. Maybe after I graduate, after I leave campus, he'll forget about us. She looked at me like I was the most naive person she had ever met. And maybe I was. Black doesn't forget, Mayor. And he doesn't forgive. But I couldn't run. I wouldn't run. So I made a decision that I thought was compromise, that I thought was noble. You can stay here, I said. Stay with me. I'll protect you. After graduation, we'll figure something out together. The relief on her face looked real. She hugged me, her body shaking with what I thought were sobs of gratitude. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I let her stay that night. She slept in my bed while I took the floor, using my textbooks as a pillow, telling myself I was being a gentleman, that I was protecting her. The truth was, I was protecting myself, protecting the image of the graduate, the son who would never disappoint. When I woke up the next morning, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. The air felt thick, suffocating, charged with something I couldn't name. She was by the window, wearing my department shirt that came down to her thighs, and when she turned to look at me, there was something different in her eyes. The emptiness was gone, replaced by a hunger that made my skin prickle. "Do you know why Black wants me back?" she asked, her voice dropping low, silky and cold. "It's not because he loves me. Black doesn't love anyone. It's because I'm good at what I do." I sat up, confused. "What do you mean?" She moved closer, each step deliberate, calculated. "I'm good at making men want me. I'm good at reading them, understanding what they need, what they're missing. I'm good at making men do stupid things for me." She was laying the trap, paving the road to my ruin with a truth that sounded like a confession of vulnerability. "I tried to warn you, Mayor. That day at the library when I sat next to you, I tried to stay away. But you were too good. Too kind. Too perfect." And Black said that's exactly the kind of person we needed. The words were sinking in slowly, their meaning trying to penetrate my naive understanding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm sorry." She was crying now, real tears mixing with whatever game she was playing. "I'm sorry that I'm not strong enough to walk away. I'm sorry that I need you. I'm sorry that loving you is going to destroy you." And then she kissed me. It was not gentle. It was desperate, consuming, the kiss of someone drowning and trying to pull me under with her. And God forgive me, I kissed her back. Every principle I had held on to, every boundary I had set, every promise I had made to stay focused, it all crumbled in that moment. I surrendered everything, my focus, my fear, my future. For those fleeting hours, I traded 20 years of discipline for one morning of intoxicating, reckless passion. I crossed a line I could never uncross, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew it. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I was not the golden boy. I was just a man, wanting a woman, consequences be damned. She left that afternoon, kissing me one last time at the door, promising to come back, promising we would figure things out together. I believed her. I believed every word. I was a fool. 2 days later, the consequences walked into my room like a judgment. I was studying, or trying to, when the door burst open. I hadn't locked it, a stupid mistake born from the euphoria of the past 2 days. 3 men entered. Big men. Black's men. I recognized them from that night at his house. Their leader was a man named Tenko. He had a scar that ran from his eyebrow to his jaw, a thick, raised line that looked like it had been made with a machete. His smile was the kind that promised pain. "Mayor," he said, his voice almost friendly. "Boss wants to see you." My blood turned to ice. I have class." Tenko laughed. "Class? Small boy, you think say nah class be your problem now? Get up. Let's go." I didn't resist. What would have been the point? They were 3, I was 1. They were armed, I could see the bulge of weapons under their shirts, and I had nothing. I walked out of my hostel room between them, and I could feel the eyes of other students on us. Some looked away quickly. Others watched with that mixture of pity and relief that comes from seeing someone else in trouble. The ride to Black's house was silent. I sat in the back of the same Range Rover, squeezed between 2 of the men, while Tenko drove. I tried to prepare myself for what was coming, tried to think of what I would say, how I would explain. But my mind was blank with terror. Black was waiting in the same study. But this time, he wasn't relaxed. This time, the air was heavy with smoke and rage. He was standing, not sitting, and when I entered, he turned to look at me with eyes that burned. "Mayor." My name sounded like a curse in his mouth. "My girlfriend told me something interesting. She said you slept with her." The room tilted. The words crashed over me like ice water. "She told him." Of course she told him. That was the plan all along. She came to my room. She said you beat her. She was scared. I was just. Just what? Black's voice was quiet now, which was somehow worse than if he had been shouting. Just helping her. By putting your dirty hands on what belongs to me. I didn't know she was going to. He moved so fast I didn't see it coming. One moment he was across the room, the next his hand was around my throat, pushing me backward into the leather chair. His face was inches from mine, and I could see every detail, the bloodshot eyes, the flared nostrils, the absolute fury. You chose to disrespect me, he said, his voice controlled but vibrating with violence. I gave you two options. Join me or die. You chose a third option, humiliation. You chose to take what belongs to me. You chose to make me look like a fool. He released my throat and I gasped for air, coughing, my vision swimming with spots. I should kill you right now, Black continued, pacing now. I should put a bullet in your head and dump your body in the lagoon. But you see, I'm not a wicked man. I'm a businessman. And killing you would be a waste. You're smart. You're about to graduate. You have potential. He stopped pacing and looked at me again. So I'm going to give you one more chance. One last chance. Are you listening? I nodded, unable to speak. You're going to work for me now. You're going to do exactly what I say, when I say it. You're going to be my engineer, my errand boy, my eyes and ears on campus. And if you do well, if you're loyal, maybe I'll let you live long enough to collect that degree. He leaned in close again. But if you try to run, if you try to tell anyone about this, police, your parents, your friends, anyone, I won't kill you. That would be too easy. I'll kill your father. I'll kill your mother. I'll burn down their house with them inside. I'll kill everyone you love. And then, when you have nothing left, when you're completely broken, when you're begging me for death, then I'll kill you too. He smiled. Do we have an understanding? What could I say? What choice did I have? I had walked into this trap with my eyes open, driven by lust and naivety and the arrogant belief that I could somehow be the hero of this story. And now the trap had closed around me, and the only way out was through. Yes, I whispered. We have an understanding. Good boy. Black patted my cheek, the gesture almost affectionate. Welcome to the family, Mayor. Your first job starts tomorrow. The next 6 months were a slow, agonizing descent into hell. My first task came the very next day. Tanko appeared at my hostel room with a small package wrapped in brown paper and tape. It was light, no bigger than a textbook, completely innocent looking. Take this to Eco Hotel, Tanko said. Room 512. Give it to the man who answers the door. His name is Al-Haji. Don't ask questions. Don't open it. Just deliver it and come back. What is it? Tanko's hand shot out and grabbed my jaw, squeezing hard enough to make my teeth hurt. What did I just say about questions, small boy? I took the package with shaking hands. The bus ride to Eco Hotel was a nightmare. I sat with the package on my lap, feeling its weight, imagining what could be inside. Drugs? Money? Something worse? Every time the bus stopped, every time a police checkpoint appeared in the distance, my heart would stop. I imagined being arrested, being searched, being found with whatever illegal thing Black was making me transport. But nothing happened. I delivered the package to Al-Haji, a fat man in expensive Igbata who looked at me with dead eyes and said nothing, and I left. Simple. Clean. And absolutely soul-destroying. That's how it started. Small jobs. Innocent-looking jobs. Deliver this package. Pick up that envelope. Meet this person. Pass this message. Each job was a small compromise, a small death of the person I used to be. Then the jobs got bigger. We need you to watch someone, Tanko said one evening. It was 3 weeks into my new life as Black's errand boy, and I had started to recognize the pattern. The bigger the job, the less Tenko smiled. Watch who? There's a group operating in Yaba. They're moving into boss's territory. We need to know their patterns. Where they stay. Who their leaders are. What time they move. He handed me a small notebook and a pen. You're an engineering student. You know how to observe, how to record. Start tonight. And so I became a spy. For 2 weeks, I spent my nights in a cramped bus stop across from a grimy compound in Yaba, pretending to study while actually watching the movements of men I didn't know, recording license plates, noting faces, documenting patterns. I used my engineering textbooks as a shield, solving thermodynamics problems while tracking human beings like they were data points. The worst part was how good I was at it. The skills I had developed to be a successful student, attention to detail, patience, systematic analysis, made me an excellent spy. I hated myself for it. My grades remained strong. Somehow, impossibly, I was still maintaining a second-class upper. The momentum of 4 years of hard work carried me through lectures and exams even as my soul rotted from the inside. I would sit in class, taking notes on structural analysis while my mind replayed the previous night's surveillance. I would solve engineering problems while mentally counting the hours until my next assignment from Black. Chitty and Bio Dun had stopped trying to reach me. Our study group had dissolved. They had found other friends, other study partners, people who weren't hollow shells pretending to be human. I saw them sometimes in lectures, and they would nod at me politely, the way you acknowledge a stranger, and move on. The loss of their friendship was another small death. My father's calls became less frequent. At first, he called every week, asking how I was, how my studies were going, reminding me that he was proud of me. But as the months went on and my responses became more monosyllabic, more distant, the calls became bi-weekly, then monthly. He was giving me space, thinking I was just stressed about final year. If only he knew the truth. One call in particular haunts me still. It was about 4 months into my service to Black, late at night. My phone rang and I saw "Papa" on the screen. I almost didn't answer. But some part of me, some small, dying part of the golden boy, made me pick up. Mayor. His voice was tired. It was late for him too, he was usually asleep by this time. How are you, my son? I'm fine, Papa. Just busy with final year project. A long silence. Then, are you in trouble, Mayor? The question hit me like a physical blow. What? No, Papa. Why would you ask that? Because I know you. I've known you all your life. And the person I'm talking to now, this is not my son. My son would come to me if something was wrong. My son would not shut me out like this. I could hear the pain in his voice, the confusion, the desperate love of a father who knew his child was drowning but couldn't reach him. I'm fine, Papa. I promise. Just stressed about school. That's all. Another long silence. Then, quietly, okay, Mayor. But remember, whatever it is, whatever you've done, whatever you're facing, you're still my son. You hear me? You're still my son. And I will always love you. I hung up and cried for the first time in months. Not because I was afraid of Black, or because I was tired, or because I was stressed. But because my father loved me, and I was throwing that love away. I was choosing to protect Black's secrets instead of accepting my father's help. I was choosing the illusion of the golden boy over the reality of being a son who needed rescue. That was the night I knew I had truly lost myself. The worst task came in month 5 of my final year. I was sitting in my room, trying to work on my final year project, a design for a water treatment facility, when Tenko appeared. He didn't knock anymore. He just walked in like he owned the place. Like he owned me. Boss needs something special this time, he said. What? There's a lecturer. Professor Adeyemi. He's been asking too many questions about Boss's activities on campus. Boss wants to know what he knows. What he's planning. Who he's been talking to. I knew Professor Adeyemi. Everyone did. He was one of the few lecturers who actually cared about cleaning up campus culture, who wasn't on anyone's payroll, who genuinely wanted to protect students. He had been organizing meetings about campus safety, pushing the administration to take action against cultism and drug dealing. How am I supposed to know what he's thinking? Tenko smiled. You're going to plant something in his office. A small device. It will let us hear his conversations, see his files. Simple. I can't get into his office. It's always locked. Then you'll find a way. You're a smart boy, Mayor. Final year engineering student. Use that brain. And if I can't? The smile vanished. Then boss will have to find another way to deal with Professor Adeyemi. And another way to deal with your parents. Your choice, small boy. I spent 3 days planning, hating myself more with each hour. The solution came from an unexpected place, my friend. My former friend. One of the guys I used to study with had access to the faculty office as a departmental representative. He had keys. He had access codes. I couldn't steal them myself. The betrayal would be too direct, too personal. So I did something worse. I left my hostel room door unlocked one night after confirming he was visiting to pick up some notes he'd left behind months ago when we were still friends. I made sure I fell asleep. Or pretended to. Black's boys came in while we both slept. They were professional, silent. They took his ID card, his access badge, made copies, and returned them before dawn. My friend never knew. But I knew. I had sacrificed one of the last genuine relationships I had left. I had sold out someone who had trusted me, who had been loyal to me even after I pushed everyone away. The bug was planted. Professor Adeyemi's investigation was compromised. 3 weeks later, he was transferred to another campus, his crusade broken. And I had helped break it. I looked at myself in the mirror after that and saw a stranger. Not the golden boy. Not Mayor. Just a shell wearing his face, going through the motions, waiting for the inevitable end. My final year exams came and went. I wrote them in a daze, my hand moving across the paper automatically, years of preparation carrying me through even though my mind was somewhere else. When the results were posted and I saw that I had graduated with a second-class upper, 2.1, I felt nothing. No joy. No relief. Just a hollow emptiness. I called my parents to tell them I had finished my exams. My mother's scream of joy was like a knife in my heart. My son is going to be a graduate. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God. My son is going to wear that gown. He's going to collect that certificate. In the background, I could hear my father's quiet voice. Tell him I'm proud of him. So proud. I hung up and sat on my bed for hours, staring at nothing. They were proud of me. They thought I had made it. They thought the golden boy had fulfilled his promise. But they didn't know. They didn't know that their son was owned by a criminal. They didn't know that the certificate I was about to receive was bought with betrayal and cowardice. The convocation invitation came 2 weeks before the ceremony. A beautiful card with the University of Lagos crest, formally inviting Mr. Mayor to collect his Bachelor of Engineering degree. My mother called 5 times that day, her voice bubbling with plans. We will come early. Your father is taking leave from work. I'm going to buy new clothes. This is the greatest day of our lives, Mayor. The greatest day. I should have told them not to come. I should have said I was sick, that the ceremony was cancelled, anything to keep them away. But I didn't. Because some pathetic part of me still wanted them there. Still wanted to see the pride in my father's eyes, even if I knew I didn't deserve it. 3 days before the convocation, Tenko came to see me one last time. Enjoy your graduation, small boy, he said, that terrible smile on his scarred face. You've been useful. Boss is pleased. But don't forget, you still belong to him. After you collect your certificate, after you take your pictures, after all the celebration is done, you report to the house. Boss has big plans for you. A graduate engineer working for him? That's valuable. He leaned in close. And Mayor? Your parents don't need to know anything about any of this. Let them be happy. Let them think their son is still the golden boy. It's better that way. He left, and I sat in my empty room, knowing that the chain was still around my neck. The degree was mine, but my life was his. The convocation ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday morning at 10 a.m. The sun was bright, too bright, the kind of harsh Lego sun that made everything feel overexposed, too vivid, too real. I put on my convocation gown that morning in my hostel room, alone. The white fabric was crisp, new, perfect. It felt like a costume. Like I was dressing up to play the role of graduate in a play where I'd already forgotten my lines. The campus was transformed. Everywhere I looked, there were families in their finest clothes, mothers in Ankara and Geli, fathers in Agbada and suits, children running around excited to see their siblings graduate. There were professional photographers, balloons, laughter, joy. It was a celebration of achievement, of promise, of futures being born. I felt like a corpse walking through a festival. My parents had called that morning. They were already on campus, somewhere near the auditorium, trying to find good seats. My mother's voice was breathless with excitement. Mayor, we're here. We can see the stage. I'm already crying and the ceremony hasn't even started. That's good, Mama. Your father says to tell you he loves you. He's so proud, Mayor. So proud he can barely speak. Each word was a nail in my coffin. The ceremony itself was a blur. We lined up by department, processed into the auditorium while families clapped and cheered. I walked in that line, keeping my face neutral, my body moving on autopilot. The Vice-Chancellor gave a speech about excellence and potential. Various dignitaries praised our achievements. Names were called, students walked across the stage to collect their certificates, cameras flashed, people applauded. When they called my name, Mr. Mayor, Bachelor of Engineering, second class upper division, I walked across that stage like a man walking to the gallows. The Vice-Chancellor shook my hand, smiling, saying, "Congratulations, Mr. Mayor. You've made your family proud. You have a bright future ahead of you." I smiled. I had practiced that smile in the mirror so many times it came naturally now. The perfect smile. The golden boy smile. The smile that said, "I've made it," while everything inside me screamed, "I'm already dead." The applause was deafening. I could hear my mother's voice above all the others, screaming my name, crying with joy. I looked out into the crowd and found them, my parents, sitting in the middle section, my mother standing and waving, my father sitting with his hands clasped together, his face wet with tears, nodding slowly like he was confirming something to himself. Asterisk, he did it. My son did it, asterisk. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to run down from that stage and tell him the truth. To warn him. To beg him to take my mother and leave, to go home, to get as far away from me as possible. But I didn't. I just smiled and walked off the stage, clutching my certificate in hands that wouldn't stop shaking. After the ceremony, graduates and their families poured out onto the field for photographs. This was the part everyone had been waiting for, the chance to capture this moment, to freeze it in time, to create memories that would last forever. I found my parents in the chaos. My mother saw me first and literally ran toward me, her wrapper flying, her arms outstretched. She grabbed me and hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe, crying and laughing at the same time. My son. My son is a graduate. Look at you. Look at my beautiful son in his gown. My father approached more slowly, his eyes never leaving my face. When he finally reached us, my mother stepped aside, still crying, and my father pulled me into an embrace. It was different from my mother's hug. It was quieter, deeper, bone deep. A silent communication that went beyond words. He held me for a long moment, then whispered into my cap, his voice rough with emotion, "You did it. You really did it, Mayor. Thank you." Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for making us proud. I wanted to tell him I was sorry. I wanted to tell him I'd failed him in ways he couldn't imagine. I wanted to tell him that I loved him, that he was the best father anyone could ask for, that he deserved a better son than me. But all I could manage was, "I love you, Papa." "I know," he said. "I've always known." We took pictures. So many pictures. My mother insisted on capturing everything, me alone, me with them, me with my certificate, me throwing my cap in the air like the other graduates. She was directing the photographer like a movie director, her joy so pure and uncomplicated that it hurt to witness. My father stood slightly apart during most of it, just watching. Not with suspicion or worry, but with a kind of peaceful contentment. Like he had reached the finish line of a long race. Like he could finally rest. We were posing for one last family portrait, my mother adjusting my gown, my father holding my certificate, the photographer telling us to say, "Cheese," when I saw them. 3 men cutting through the crowd with deliberate precision. Moving toward us like sharks through water. Tanko. Viper. Kilo. Black's senior boys. All dressed in ill-fitting black suits that did nothing to hide the predators underneath. They moved through the crowd of celebrating families like they owned the space, like they had every right to be there. My blood turned to ice. They stopped directly beside us, dissolving the careful distance I had tried to maintain between my two worlds. Tanko, without invitation, without permission, draped a heavy arm around my shoulder. His grip was immediate, tight, possessive. "Congratulations, Mayor." His voice was loud, jovial, carrying across the field. "We're so proud of you, brother. Look at you. A graduate." Everything stopped. The photographer lowered his camera, confused. My mother's smile faltered. My father's brows knitted together. "Who are you people?" my mother asked, her voice uncertain. "We're Mayor's friends, Ma." Tanko's smile was wide and empty. "We go way back. We've been with him through everything this final year. Isn't that right, Mayor?" He squeezed my shoulder hard enough to hurt. My father was staring at them now, his civil servant's eye assessing them with growing concern. These were not students. Their age, their bearing, their clothes, everything about them was wrong for this setting. "Mayor," my father said, his voice calm but firm, "do you know these men?" This was it. The last chance to save my soul, even if it meant destroying everything else. I should have screamed. I should have told the truth. I should have said, "They're gangsters, Papa. They own me. Run. Please run." But the words stuck in my throat. The fear was too strong. The shame was too heavy. And underneath it all was that pathetic, dying hope that maybe, somehow, this would pass. That Black would let me go. That my parents didn't have to know what their golden boy had become. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. And then my father's eyes dropped. He was looking at Tanko's waist, where the cheap suit jacket had pulled up slightly, revealing the cold metallic glint of a handgun tucked into his waistband. I saw the exact moment my father understood. The exact moment the truth crashed over him like a wave. His face changed, the pride and peace draining away, replaced by horror and growing dread. "Mayor." His voice was different now. Quiet. Shaking. "What is going on? Who are these people?" "Papa, let me explain." But he wasn't listening to me anymore. He was staring at Tanko, at Viper, at Kilo, and I saw recognition dawn in his eyes. Years of reading newspapers, of hearing stories about campus cultism, of warning his son to be careful, it all came together in that moment. "You people." His voice was barely a whisper. "You're cultists. You're criminals. You're the ones." He grabbed my arm with sudden, desperate strength, trying to pull me away from Tanko, trying to yank me back into safety, back into the world where I was still his son. "Come, Mayor. We're leaving. Now. We're going to the police. We're going to." Tanko's other hand shot out and grabbed my opposite arm, creating a terrible tug-of-war with me in the middle. His smile vanished, replaced by something cold and final. "Sorry, Papa," he said, his voice devoid of respect. "Mayor is not going anywhere. He belongs to us now. Let go of my son." My father's voice had changed from fear to fury. He was no fighter, he was a civil servant, a gentleman who had spent his life with paperwork and regulations. But he was also a father, and that was enough. "Let go of him now." He released my arm and pushed Tanko with both hands. It was a desperate, wild shove, the action of a man fighting for his child's life. Everything slowed down after that. I saw Tanko stumble backward. I saw Viper and Kilo move forward. I saw my mother's face as she realized something terrible was about to happen. I saw the crowd around us start to notice, start to back away, creating a circle of horrified spectators. And then I saw Tanko's hand move to his waist. "No!" I screamed. "Please, no!" The sound was not the deafening roar you hear in films. It was a sharp, clean crack that cut through all the noise of the celebration like a knife through paper. My father jerked backward, his arms flying out like he'd been punched by an invisible fist. A red bloom appeared instantly on his white shirt, arterial red, impossibly bright against the white fabric, spreading like someone had spilled wine. My mother's scream was not human. It was an animal sound, a noise of absolute devastation that seemed to come from somewhere deep in the earth. Time unfroze. My father fell. Not dramatically, not slowly like in movies, but suddenly, like a puppet with cut strings. He crumpled to the ground, and I fell with him, my white graduation gown, the symbol of my family's triumph, the physical manifestation of 20 years of sacrifice, spreading around us both like a shroud. "Papa!" I grabbed his face in my hands. His eyes were still open, still looking at me, but they were glazing over, focusing on something beyond me. "Papa, please. Stay with me. Please stay with me." Blood was everywhere. On my hands, on my gown, on the grass, pooling beneath us in a spreading crimson lake. I pressed my hands against his chest, trying to stop the bleeding, but it kept coming, hot and thick and unstoppable. Around us, chaos erupted. People were screaming, running, pulling out phones. My mother had collapsed beside us, her hands reaching for my father, her mouth open in a continuous wail that wouldn't stop. "Papa, I'm sorry," I sobbed, pressing harder on his chest even though I knew it was useless. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. This is all my fault. I should have told you. I should have asked for help. Papa, please. Please don't leave me." He tried to speak. I leaned in, pressing my ear to his mouth, desperate to hear his last words. The smell of gunpowder was sharp in the humid air, mixing with the copper smell of blood and the distant aroma of the celebration that was still happening on the other side of the field, people who didn't yet know that someone had been murdered at a graduation ceremony. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Each word was threaded with pain, with blood, with dying breath. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." "No, Papa. No. You did everything right. I'm the one who..." But he couldn't hear me anymore. His eyes, which had been looking at me with such terrible sadness, such profound forgiveness, slowly closed. His chest, which had been rising and falling in shallow, desperate gasps, went still. My father, Papa Mayor, the civil servant who woke up at 5 every morning, the man who cried when I got into university, the father who gave me all his money because he knew I was in trouble, the man who loved me more than I deserved, was gone. And I was the one who killed him. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Security personnel, campus police, real police, they poured onto the field from multiple directions. Someone had called them, I realized dimly. Or maybe they had already been there, watching, waiting, because Black's activities had finally drawn too much attention. Hands grabbed me, pulling me away from my father's body. I fought against them, screaming, trying to hold on, but they were too strong. "No! That's my father. Let me stay with him. Papa. Papa. You're under arrest, a voice said, official and impersonal. Cold metal clicked around my wrists. Handcuffs. For association with known criminals and suspected involvement in the murder of. I didn't kill him. I screamed. I didn't do it. He's my father. He's my father. But they weren't listening. Tanko, Viper, and Kilo were being arrested too, pushed to the ground, handcuffed, read their rights. The gun that had killed my father was being bagged as evidence. Witnesses were being corralled, statements were being taken. And through it all, I could hear my mother. She was still on the ground next to my father's body, holding his hand, rocking back and forth, making sounds that weren't quite words, weren't quite screams, just pure, distilled grief-given voice. I was led away in handcuffs, my white graduation gown now stained red, my certificate somewhere on the ground, forgotten. As they pushed me into the police van, I looked back one last time. My mother was being lifted by other women, family members or kind strangers, I couldn't tell. She was limp in their arms, her strength completely gone. The field that had been filled with joy and celebration was now a crime scene, cordoned off with yellow tape, swarming with police and frightened families. And in the center of it all, covered now with someone's jacket, was my father. The golden boy had finally fallen. And he had taken the best man I knew with him. The police station was a nightmare of fluorescent lights and peeling paint. They put me in a holding cell with Tanko, Viper, and Kilo, a decision that would haunt me for years. Being trapped in a small space with the men who had just killed my father was its own special kind of torture. Tanko sat in the corner, his face blank. The gun had been his. The shot had been his. But he showed no remorse, no fear. This was just another day for him. Your fault, he said after an hour of silence. His voice was casual, like we were discussing the weather. If you had just kept your mouth shut, if you had just introduced us properly, none of this would have happened. Old man pushed me. Gun went off. Accident. You murdered my father, I said, my voice raw from screaming, from crying. I defended myself, Tanko corrected. He examined his fingernails. That's what my lawyer will say. That's what the court will hear. Your papa attacked me. I reacted. Simple. I lunged at him. Or tried to. Viper caught me easily, slammed me against the cell wall hard enough to knock the wind out of me. Easy, graduate boy, Viper said. You want to add assault to your charges? My charges. The words sank in slowly. I was being charged. Not just as a witness, but as an accomplice. I had worked for Black. I had run his errands. I had planted bugs and spied on people and delivered packages. In the eyes of the law, I was one of them. The interrogation came hours later. A detective, a tired-looking man in his 50s named Inspector Okafor, sat across from me in a small room that smelled of sweat and desperation. Tell me everything, he said, pulling out a recorder. From the beginning. How did you get involved with Black? So I told him. All of it. About Zara. About the threat. About the 6 months of servitude. About the errands and the surveillance and the bug in Professor Adeyemi's office. I held nothing back. What was the point of secrets now? My father was dead. The golden boy was dead. All that was left was the truth. Inspector Okafor listened without interrupting, his face impassive. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. You know what your problem is, Mayor? You think you're a victim. You think because you were threatened, because you were scared, that you had no choice. But you did have choices. Every single day for 6 months, you made a choice. You chose to protect your degree instead of protecting your family. You chose silence instead of courage. And your father paid the price. His words were a knife in an already mortal wound. I know, I whispered. I know. Do you? He leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, you're still making excuses. I was threatened. I was afraid. She seduced me. You're still not taking responsibility. What do you want me to say? That I killed my father? Fine. I killed him. Not with the gun, but with my cowardice. I killed him. Are you happy now? I don't care about happy, Mayor. I care about justice. And justice means you're going to be charged. Maybe not with murder, that's on Tanko. But accessory to criminal activities? Conspiracy? Those are real charges with real consequences. He stood up. Think about your mother. Think about what you're going to tell her when she comes to visit you in prison. Think about how you're going to explain that her husband died because her son was too ashamed to ask for help. The cell they moved me to after the interrogation was different, separate from Tanko and the others. Smaller. Colder. I sat on the metal bench and stared at my hands. They were still stained with my father's blood. The red had turned brown, dried in the creases of my palms, under my fingernails. I had killed my father with these hands. Not by pulling a trigger, but by making 1,000 small choices that led to that moment. By choosing Zara over wisdom. By choosing pride over honesty. By choosing the illusion of success over the reality of asking for help. 2 days passed before I learned the full truth about Zara. A different detective came to see me, a woman this time, Detective Amara. She carried a thick file folder and a laptop. We raided Black's compound, she said, sitting across from me. Found a lot of interesting things. Including information about you. She opened the folder and pulled out photographs. They were surveillance photos, of me. Walking to class. Studying in the library. Eating at Mama Put's. All taken before I ever met Zara. Black was watching you for months, Detective Amara explained. He has a whole recruitment system. He looks for promising students, good grades, clean records, strong family values. The kind of students who would be useful to him. The kind who could move in circles he couldn't access. She pulled out more documents. Zara is his recruiter. Has been for 3 years. Her real name is Amanda. She's 27 years old, not a student at all. She's been running this scam for Black since she was 24. She identifies targets, gets close to them, manufactures situations that compromise them, and brings them into the organization. The photographs showed Zara, Amanda, with other men. Other students. All of them looking at her the way I had looked at her. All of them caught in the same trap. You were target number 12, Detective Amara continued. The others are all working for Black now. Graduates with good jobs, clean backgrounds, perfect for moving money, making connections, providing cover. You were going to be his engineer. He had big plans for you. She closed the folder. The library meeting. Staged. She knew your schedule. The threat from Black. Calculated to traumatize you enough that you'd be too scared to tell anyone. The night she came to your room crying. Pure performance. She's good at her job, Mayor. Very good. I thought I would feel anger. Rage. But all I felt was numbness. Of course it was all fake. Of course I had been played. The golden boy, so smart in his textbooks, so brilliant with his equations, had been utterly foolish where it mattered. Did you arrest her? She disappeared. The day before your convocation. Probably warned by someone in Black's network. We're looking for her, but... Detective Amara shrugged. People like her know how to vanish. After she left, I sat in my cell and thought about Zara, Amanda, whoever she really was. I thought about the moment she kissed me, about the way she had looked at me with those empty eyes, about how she had said, "I'm sorry," even as she destroyed me. Was any of it real? The tears? The fear? Or was I just another mark, another promising student to be broken and remade into something useful for Black? I would never know. And somehow, that was worse than if it had all been clearly, simply evil. My mother's first visit came a week after my arrest. They led me into the visiting room, a dingy space separated by plexiglass and connected by old telephones that crackled with static. When I saw her, I almost didn't recognize her. She had aged decades in a week. Her face was gaunt, her eyes sunken and red from crying. She wore all black, mourning clothes. She moved like an old woman, slow and careful, like her bones might break. When she picked up the phone and looked at me through the glass, I saw something in her eyes that was worse than anger, worse than hatred. I saw disappointment. I saw the death of hope. "Mama," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She didn't respond at first. She just looked at me, her eyes moving over my face like she was trying to find her son somewhere underneath the stranger she was seeing. "Why didn't you tell us?" she finally asked. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "When you came home that time. When you were scared. Why didn't you tell your father what was happening?" I was ashamed. I thought I could handle it. I thought. "You thought what? That you were smarter than them? That you could outsmart criminals?" Her voice rose, cracking. "You let your father die thinking he failed you. His last words were an apology, Mayor. He apologized to you. Do you understand what that means? He died thinking he wasn't a good enough father to protect you from whatever trouble you were in." Each word was a hammer blow. But the truth is, he was a perfect father. The best father. And you, her voice broke completely. You threw away his love. You threw away his trust. You let him die to protect your pride. "I know, Mama. I know. If I could take it back. But you can't." She wiped her eyes with a black handkerchief. "You can't take it back. He's gone, Mayor. We buried him yesterday. Without you. You couldn't even attend your own father's funeral because you're in here, paying for your foolishness." The thought of my father's funeral happening without me was unbearable. I imagined the grave, the prayers, my mother standing alone, all the relatives and friends offering condolences while asking themselves how the golden boy ended up in prison. "I've hired a lawyer," she continued. "Barrister Adekunle. He's expensive, but he's good. He thinks he can get you a reduced sentence. He thinks he can prove you were coerced." "Mama, you don't have to." "What else am I going to do?" she snapped. "Let my only son rot in prison? You're all I have left, Mayor. You're all I have left in this world." The weight of that statement, the fact that I was now her only family, the only thing left of the life she and my father had built, was crushing. "He wants to see you tomorrow. He'll explain the strategy." "But Mayor," she leaned closer to the glass. "You have to tell the truth. Everything. No more hiding. No more shame. You understand? The truth is the only thing that can save you now." She stood up to leave, then paused. "I still love you. I don't understand you. I'm angry with you. I'm disappointed in you. But you're my son. And I will fight for you even if you didn't fight for your father." She hung up the phone and walked away without looking back. Barrister Adekunle was everything my mother said, expensive, sharp, and brutally honest. He was a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of confidence that came from winning impossible cases. "Your case is difficult," he said bluntly during our first meeting. "But not impossible. The murder charge won't stick to you, Tenko pulled the trigger, and multiple witnesses confirm your father attacked first. Self-defense is Tenko's angle, and honestly, it might work for him. Scum like him always seem to slip through." He opened his briefcase and pulled out documents. "What we need to focus on is the conspiracy and accessory charges. The prosecution will argue that you were a willing participant in Black's criminal organization. They have evidence of you running errands, conducting surveillance, planting surveillance devices. That's damning. But I was threatened. My family was threatened. I know. And that's our defense, coercion under duress. We're going to paint you as a victim, a promising student who got caught in a web he couldn't escape from. We'll bring in character witnesses, your professors, your former friends, people who can testify to your good character before all this happened. He looked at me seriously. But here's what you need to understand, Mayor. The prosecution is going to argue that you had multiple opportunities to seek help and you didn't. That's the weak point in our defense. Why didn't you go to campus security? Why didn't you tell your parents? Why didn't you go to the police? I was afraid. Of course you were afraid. But the court will ask, were you more afraid of black or more afraid of disappointing your parents? More afraid of dying or more afraid of losing your degree? He paused. That's what we're up against. The trial began 3 months after my arrest. Those 3 months in jail were their own kind of death. The other inmates knew I was a murder case, that my father had died because of me. Some of them respected that in a twisted way. Others mocked me. Big university boy, they would say. Engineering graduate. But you can't even protect your own father. The trial was held at the Lagos High Court. The courtroom was packed, journalists, curious onlookers, family members, university staff who couldn't believe the golden boy had fallen so far. My mother sat in the front row every single day, dressed in black, her face a mask of controlled grief. The prosecution was led by Mrs. Okoro, a stern woman in her 50s with a reputation for destroying defendants on the stand. Her opening statement was devastating. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a case about choices. The defendant, Mr. Mayor, wants you to believe he's a victim. But the evidence will show that he made calculated choices, every single day for 6 months, to protect his own interests at the expense of others. He chose silence when he should have spoken. He chose complicity when he should have sought help. And his choices led directly to the death of his father, an innocent civil servant who died trying to protect his son from consequences of his own making. She presented the evidence methodically. Testimony from the package recipient at Eco Hotel. Surveillance logs I had written in my own handwriting. The bug found in Professor Adeyemi's office with my fingerprints on it. Testimony from my roommate about my strange behavior, my late-night absences, my withdrawn nature. Then she called witnesses who hurt the most. Chitty and Bio Dunn, my former friends. Chitty testified about how I had changed in final year, how I had pushed them away, how I had become secretive and distant. The mayor I knew would never have gotten involved with criminals. But the person he became, I didn't recognize him anymore. Bio Dunn testified about the night his ID was stolen, about how my door had been unlocked, about how he had suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to believe his friend could betray him. I trusted him, Bio Dunn said quietly. We all trusted him. And he used that trust. Watching them testify against me, speaking truths I couldn't deny, was like watching my past condemn my present. Mrs. Okoro's most damaging moment came when she presented a timeline of my activities. She showed that I had been home for 2 weeks, living with my parents, and had said nothing about being in danger. She showed that I had phone records proving I called them regularly throughout the semester and never once mentioned black or threats or fear. Mr. Mayor had countless opportunities to ask for help, she argued. He chose not to because he valued his degree, his reputation, and his image as the golden boy more than he valued honesty and his family's safety. This is not a victim. This is a willing participant who only regrets his choices now that they've had fatal consequences. Barrister Adekunle's defense was passionate but fighting uphill. He brought in my professors who testified about my excellent academic record, my character, my promise. Professor Adewale, my project supervisor, spoke about how shocked he was to learn of my involvement with criminals. Mayor was one of my best students. Focused, disciplined, respectful. This behavior is completely out of character. He called Dr. Femi Alawale, an expert on cultism and criminal coercion in Nigerian universities, who explained the psychological tactics used by groups like Black's organization. These criminal networks are sophisticated. They identify promising students specifically because those students have the most to lose. The threat to family members is not idle, these groups follow through. The fear is paralyzing, especially for young people who have been raised to solve problems on their own and to avoid bringing shame to their families. But the testimony that mattered most, the one that broke my composure completely, was my mother's. Barrister Adekunle called her as a character witness, and she took the stand with dignity, her black dress pressed and neat, her posture straight despite the weight of grief she carried. "Tell us about your son," Barrister Adekunle said gently. "Mayor was our only child. Our blessing. From the time he was small, he never gave us trouble. He was obedient, respectful, studious. My husband and I," her voice caught. "My husband and I sacrificed everything for his education. We sold property. We went without things we needed. Because we believed in him. Because we knew he would make us proud." "Did he make you proud?" "Yes. Every semester, every year, he excelled. We never had to push him. He pushed himself. Maybe too much." She looked at me. "Maybe we put too much pressure on him. Maybe we made him think that failure wasn't an option, that asking for help was weakness. When he came home unexpectedly in his 300 level, did you suspect something was wrong?" "Yes. I knew something was wrong. A mother knows. But he said he was fine, and I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that my son would come to me if he was in real danger." "Did your husband suspect something as well?" My mother's composure cracked. Tears started flowing down her face. "Yes. My husband knew. He gave Mayor all the money in his wallet. He told him to use it to solve whatever problem he had. He told him to ask for help. But Mayor," she sobbed. "Mayor was too proud. Or too scared. Or too ashamed. And now my husband is dead." Mrs. Okoro's cross-examination was brutal. "Mrs. Mayor, you testified that your son was obedient and respectful. But isn't it true that his obedience was selective? He obeyed you when it came to studying, but he disobeyed when it came to honesty?" Yes, I suppose. And you said your husband gave him money to solve his problems. But your son didn't use that money to solve his problems, did he? He used it to go back to school and continue working for a criminal. He was afraid. Fear is understandable. But your son was a grown man, a university student, someone you described as intelligent and capable. He had resources, campus security, police, family. He chose not to use them. Can you explain why?" My mother looked at me, then back at Mrs. Okoro. "I can't explain it. I don't understand it. If I understood it, maybe my husband would still be alive." The courtroom was silent after that. The verdict came after 3 months of testimony, arguments, and deliberation. The jury was out for 2 days, a sign that they were split, that the case was not clear-cut. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdict. On the charge of murder in the first degree, not guilty. A collective exhale filled the room. My mother gripped the rail in front of her. On the charge of conspiracy to commit criminal activities, guilty. My heart sank. On the charge of accessory to criminal activities, guilty. The judge, an old man with tired eyes and silver hair named Justice Adebayo, looked at me over his glasses. The courtroom was utterly silent, waiting for sentencing. "Mr. Mayor," he began, his voice heavy with disappointment, "I have presided over many cases in my career. I have seen hardened criminals, career offenders, people who chose crime as a lifestyle. You are not one of those people. The court believes you were coerced. The court believes you were afraid. The court believes you did not want any of this to happen." He paused. "But the court also believes you had agency. You had choices. And you consistently chose the wrong path. You chose silence over courage. You chose pride over wisdom. You chose your degree over your father's life." Each word landed like a physical blow. The death of your father was not your intent, but it was the foreseeable consequence of your actions. You knew you were involved with dangerous men. You knew your family was at risk. You knew the graduation ceremony would be a vulnerable moment. Yet you said nothing. You warned no one. You allowed your parents to walk into a situation that resulted in your father's death. He looked down at his papers. Taking into account your age, your lack of prior criminal record, your coercion, and your cooperation with investigators, this court sentences you to 6 years imprisonment in a minimum security correctional facility, with the possibility of parole after 3 years. 6 years. Not as bad as it could have been. But for my mother, for my future, for the golden boy who was supposed to change his family's fortune, it was a lifetime. Mr. Mayor, Justice Adebayo said, looking at me one last time, I hope you use these 6 years to understand something fundamental. Your father's death was not caused by the bullet that entered his body. It was caused by the silence that lived in your heart. Your silence killed him. Remember that. As they led me away in handcuffs, I looked back at my mother one final time. She wasn't crying. She wasn't wailing. She was just sitting there, staring at the empty space where I had been standing, looking like someone who had lost everything and was trying to figure out how to keep living anyway. Prison was not like the movies. It was boring. Brutally, monotonously boring. The days blurred together in a haze of routine: wake up, breakfast, work detail, lunch, yard time, dinner, lockdown. Every day the same. Every day a reminder of what I had lost. I was sent to Curate medium security prison, in a section reserved for non-violent offenders and first-time criminals. My fellow inmates were a mix: fraudsters, embezzlers, drug offenders, people who had made catastrophic mistakes and were paying for them. They all knew who I was. The graduate who killed his father. The golden boy who fell from grace. Some of them respected the degree, asked me questions about engineering, about university life. Others mocked me. All that education and you're in here with us, they would say. What's the point of book if you don't have sense? I couldn't argue with them. My mother visited once a month. She had sold her provision kiosk to pay for Barrister Adekunle's fees. She had moved out of our family home, too many memories, too much pain, and was living with her sister in Suralere. Each visit, she looked a little older, a little more worn down. She never said, "I forgive you." She never said, "It's okay." But she kept coming, kept bringing me food, kept updating me on family news, kept being my mother even though I had destroyed her life. "Your Uncle Tund asks about you," she said during one visit. "He says when you get out, he can help you find work. His friend has a construction company. They need engineers. Mama, no one is going to hire an ex-convict. Then you'll have to work harder to prove yourself." Her voice was firm. "Your father didn't raise you to give up. I didn't sacrifice everything for you to waste away in self-pity. You're going to get out of here, and you're going to rebuild. You hear me?" "Yes, Mama." "Good. Because that's the only way any of this means anything. The only way your father's death has any purpose is if you become the man he believed you could be." I started teaching in prison about 6 months into my sentence. It began accidentally. A younger inmate, maybe 22, asked me to help him with basic mathematics. He was trying to get his WAEC certificate, trying to improve himself. I spent an hour with him one afternoon, showing him how to solve simple equations, and word spread. Soon I had 5 students. Then 10. Then 20. The prison authorities noticed and made it official. I was allowed to run education classes twice a week in a small room usually used for counseling sessions. I taught mathematics, basic physics, literacy. Most of my students were young men who had dropped out of school, gotten involved in crime, and were now trying to find a different path. They listened to me not because I was the golden boy, that person was long dead, but because I was one of them. I had made mistakes. I had fallen. And I was trying, however imperfectly, to climb back up. Teaching became my redemption project. It didn't erase what I had done. It didn't bring my father back. But it gave me purpose, gave me a reason to wake up every day, gave me a way to use my education for something other than servicing criminals. One day, about 18 months into my sentence, Barrister Adekunle came to visit. It was unusual, Lawyers didn't usually visit clients after sentencing unless there was new business. "There's been a development," he said, sitting across from me in the visiting room. "Black's trial finally concluded. He's been sentenced to 15 years for racketeering, drug trafficking, and a host of other charges. His entire network is being dismantled." "What about Zara?" "Amanda? Still missing. But 3 other recruiters were arrested. They're cooperating, providing testimony. The entire operation is collapsing." He pulled out some papers. "Here's what matters to you: your testimony during your trial, your cooperation with investigators, the information you provided about Black's operations. It's all being factored into the larger case. The prosecutor wants to know if you'd be willing to testify against Black." "Why would they need my testimony?" "They have him already. To make sure the sentence sticks. To provide corroboration. And," he looked at me seriously, "to potentially reduce your sentence. Good behavior, cooperation with authorities, testimony in a major criminal case, these things matter for parole." I thought about it. Testifying meant reliving everything. It meant facing Black in court, seeing that smile again, remembering Zara and my father and all the choices that led me here. But it also meant taking responsibility. It meant actively fighting the system that had destroyed my life instead of passively serving my time. "I'll do it," I said. The trial happened 6 months later. I was transported from Curate to the courthouse in prison transport, handcuffed, wearing a prison uniform. The courtroom was different from my trial, bigger, more crowded, more media attention. Black was the big fish, and everyone wanted to see him fall. When they led me to the witness stand, I had to walk past Black. He was sitting at the defense table, wearing an expensive suit, looking calm and confident. When I walked by, he smiled at me. That same terrible smile. "Golden boy," he mouthed silently. "Always knew you'd break." I testified for 4 hours. I told them everything: how I was recruited, what errands I ran, what I saw, what I knew about his organization. The defense attorney tried to discredit me, pointing out that I was a convicted criminal, that I had motivation to lie, that I was trying to reduce my sentence. But the prosecution had corroboration, other witnesses, evidence, documentation. My testimony was just one piece of a massive case. Black was convicted on all counts. 15 years in maximum security. His empire was destroyed, his assets seized, his lieutenants imprisoned or scattered. As they led him away, he looked at me one last time. Not angry. Not vengeful. Just indifferent. Like I was nothing. Like I had always been nothing. Just another tool that had served its purpose and was now discarded. That indifference was somehow worse than hatred would have been. The parole hearing happened 3 years and 2 months into my sentence. I sat before a board of stern-faced officials who reviewed my file, my behavior reports, my education program, my cooperation with authorities. "Mr. Mayor," the chairman said, "you've been a model prisoner. You've contributed positively to the prison community. You've shown genuine remorse. However, the nature of your crime, the death of your father as a result of your criminal associations, is severe. Why should we grant you early release?" I had prepared for this question for months. I can't undo what I did. I can't bring my father back. If I could trade places with him, I would. But I can't. What I can do is spend the rest of my life trying to be the man he believed I could be. In here, I can teach 20 men. Out there, I can do more. I can contribute to society. I can use my degree for good. I can honor my father's memory by becoming someone he would be proud of. The board deliberated for a week. Then the call came: parole granted. My release day was a gray morning in October, almost exactly 3 years after my father's death. I walked out of Curate prison with nothing but a small bag containing my possessions, my certificates, some letters from my mother, and the photograph of my father that had been sent to me in my first month of imprisonment. Barrister Adekunle was waiting outside. He had stayed in touch throughout my sentence, had become not just my lawyer but something like a mentor. "Your mother couldn't come," he said as I got into his car. She's not well. The stress, the grief, it's taken a toll. But she's waiting for you. He drove me through Lagos, and I watched the city pass by through the window. Everything looked the same but different. The streets were more congested. New buildings had gone up. Technology had advanced. 3 years wasn't long, but it felt like a lifetime. I have something to show you, Barrister Adekunle said. He drove us to a small plot of land in Ikorodu, about an hour from Lagos proper. On the land was a house, or the skeleton of one. The foundation was laid, the walls were partially built, but construction had clearly stopped years ago. What is this? Your father bought this land 10 years ago, Barrister Adekunle explained. He was building a retirement home. For him and your mother. Somewhere quiet, away from the city. He was paying for it slowly, little by little, whenever he had extra money. I walked through the unfinished structure, touching the concrete walls, imagining my father's dreams built into every block. After your father died, your mother couldn't continue the payments. The construction stopped. But she kept the deed. She wanted you to have it. She said, he pulled out an envelope. She said your father wanted this to be your inheritance. Not a house, but the possibility of one. The foundation. The rest was up to you. I opened the envelope. Inside was the deed to the property and a letter in my father's handwriting. It was dated 2 months before he died, written during my final year. My dear Mayor, it read. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. I don't know how or when, but I know that life is uncertain. I'm writing this because I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not because of your grades or your degree, but because you're my son. This land represents everything your mother and I worked for, a better future, a place of peace, somewhere to call home. But a house is just bricks and cement. What matters is what you build with your life. I don't know what challenges you'll face. I don't know what mistakes you'll make, we all make them. But I know that whatever happens, you have the foundation. You have the education we gave you. You have the values we taught you. You have the love we poured into you. Use them well, Mayor. Build something beautiful. Build something that matters. I love you. Always. Papa. I stood in that unfinished house and cried. Not the desperate, guilty crying of the first year. But something deeper, cleaner. Grief, yes, but also gratitude. My father had loved me even when I didn't deserve it. He had believed in me even when I had stopped believing in myself. He had left me not just land, but a mission, build something that matters. What do I do now? I asked Barrister Adekunle. You rebuild, he said simply. Your uncle got you a job interview next week, a small construction firm that needs an engineer. The pay isn't great, and they know about your conviction. But they're willing to give you a chance. After that, he gestured at the unfinished house. You finish what your father started. And you keep teaching. I've arranged for you to volunteer at a community center in Yaba. They need someone to help young people with mathematics and career guidance. Why are you doing all this for me? Because I'm old, he said with a slight smile. And I've defended a lot of criminals in my life. Most of them were guilty and stayed guilty. But you? You're genuinely trying to change. And that's rare. Worth investing in. My mother was waiting at my aunt's house in Suralere. When I walked in, she was sitting in the parlor, and she looked so small, so fragile, that I barely recognized her. The strong woman who had run her provision kiosk, who had haggled with customers, who had fought for my legal defense, she was gone, replaced by this elderly woman who looked like a strong wind could blow her away. Mama, I said, kneeling in front of her. She touched my face, her hands shaking. You're thinner. So are you. We've both lost a lot, she said. Then, for the first time since my father's death, she hugged me. Really hugged me. And I felt her forgiveness in that embrace. Not absolution, I would never be absolved, but acceptance. Acceptance that I was her son, that I had failed catastrophically, and that she loved me anyway. I was a graduate, finally, but one who had lost everything. The 6 years had been paid, but the debt to my father could only be paid in the remainder of my life. I looked at the house, a monument to a shattered dream, and knew what my new mission was, not to mourn the golden boy, but to build a man worthy of the sacrifice. I had to face the world, an ex-convict with a first-class mind and a second chance, and I had to find a way to finish what Black and Zara started, the dismantling of the legacy of corruption that cost my father his life. I am Mayor, the graduate who was wicked. Learn from me, tell me the time and country you are watching this from, and please share your advice for me in the comments section. Thank you for giving me your time.